The first mass EVs this current decade hit the UK roads at over £35,000, with most much nearer £50,000, making them totally unaffordable to the average UK driver, who spends less than £30,000 on a new car. Well, that has now all changed, and new EVs are coming on sale from just £8,495 on the road. I'm Dave. Welcome to Dave Takes It On, where we have a look at what is actually happening in the new EV market. It's quite amazing. Well, we really need to start by finding out what the market actually is, and the best place for that is to look at the top 10 UK new car sales. Well, this is led by the Ford Puma, followed by Kia Sportage, Nissan Qashqai, Nissan Juke, Audi A3, VW Golf, BMW 1 Series, MG HS. And a quick check of the prices, these are list prices, puts them all between about £20,000 and £30,000 starting price. And then when we look in the small car bracket, we get cars much below £25,000, often in the £15,000 to £20,000 range, with cars like Renault Clio, Honda Jazz, Skoda Fabia, Suzuki Swift, Toyota Aygo, Dacia Sandero, Seat Ibiza, and the like. Only a handful of these go over £20,000, and some dip down below £15,000. So what we were looking at is a big gap between new car buyers being able to afford cars from as little as £14,000 up to about £30,000, and the initial EVs coming on the market at about £35,000, going up to well over £100,000. And so quite rightly, people complained they were overpriced. Well, they actually weren't. Well, some of them were, because most of these offered were usually luxury or premium models, and they were worth an awful lot more than the normal budget. They were just in a totally different bracket to what most people in the UK were able to afford and were buying. But a look at the top 10 cars sold in the 2024 in the UK again shows that people aren't buying these luxury premium cars in large numbers. They're looking for much more practical cars. In some cases, it'll be a family saloon, hatchback or SUV. In other cases, particularly where it's a second car, this will be a small car in the range of Toyota Yaris or Vauxhall Corsa. And just recently, we've had an absolute plethora of new EVs in these exact ranges, with EVs like the Citroën E C3 starting at $21,990, the Renault 5 starting at $25,000, Dacia Spring $14,990. Fiat E Panda, that's projected for about $22,000, Hyundai Insta projected for $22,000, and the BYD Seagull, that could be as low as $15,000. At long last, we're getting a good number of EVs under £25,000 on sale in the UK. Well, they're not yet price comparable with the ICE equivalent. For example, the Citroën C3 petrol does still start at $16,300 and the EC3 $22,000, so there's still a difference, but the spec is very different. The EC3 basic model is much higher, better spec'd than the C3 petrol hybrid top of the range, which is over $19,000. So the gap's getting closer. And the Dacia Sandero, one of the best-selling small cheap cars in the UK, about $13,500 for the petrol. The Dacia Spring is $14,990. It's getting closer. And again, although the average price is under £20,000 for the small cars, the Honda Jazz, which is a small car, it's petrol, is $26,000. And the Toyota Yaris, that's a hybrid, starting at $23,000, but going way up to $29,000. Oh, by the way, the Ford Puma, the best-selling car, starts once again £25,800, right the way through to £33,000. Similar to the Volkswagen Golf, starting at $27,000, going up to $38,000, or the VW T-Roc, $28,300 starting price. So if you're a new person who buys new cars, yeah, and I know 4 times as many people don't buy new cars, they buy used ones, sometimes only a couple of years old. But if you are a new car buyer, you are most likely to be looking below £30,000, and all of a sudden this year you'll be getting a real choice of cars. But EVs offer something totally new, and this started with the BYD Seagull. This is what BYD call a microcar. It is very much smaller than most other cars, not really tiny, but in China that car sells for about $9,000. That's about £8,000 in the UK. But when it comes here, obviously, it's going to have car tax, VAT, and possibly tariffs for Chinese cars, if indeed we decide to apply them. Then this one's going to end up here about $15,000. But for half that price, you can have a brand new EV, one which is very popular in Europe. And these are micro-budget EVs, and they really make people think, what is a car for? So if you spend $30,000 on a car, it will, for an average owner, spend about 80% of its time parked. And while it's parked and locked, it will be depreciating and deteriorating. And although many of us like the bigger cars and blame the family, if you ever stand on a motorway bridge and check the cars, 95% of them only have one driver and a passenger. That's it. And when various companies are looking at robotaxis, these are EVs without a driver, they've done a survey which confirms this. The average taxi collects either 1 or 2 passengers 90% of the time. Well, for many families, they do have 2 cars, and 2 cars are pretty much essential in certain circumstances. If you have a nice new house on a greenfield site miles outside of a town or city, and both of the partners work, then in many cases 2 cars is an absolute necessity. But 1 car is normally used much less than the other. See, families generally have a habit, we have it in my family, of using the bigger car for the longer journeys, or when we have numerous members of the family travelling in the car, and the smaller car for just knocking around, nipping down the shops or the hairdressers. It doesn't make a lot of sense to spend £25,000 on something like a Toyota Yaris or a Honda Jazz or a Seat Ibiza, Volkswagen Polo, only to have it sit outside probably nearer 90% of the time. Because certainly in my family, the second car's daily commute is about 4 miles each way. My larger car has a much longer journey every day and does all the really long runs. If all the second car is used for is nipping to and from work, just a few miles, or nipping to the shop, then a really small car makes an awful lot of sense, but only if it's cheap. Small car like the Honda Jazz starts at £26,000. That's a small car. It is not cheap. Whereas a Toyota Aygo petrol car, that is a small car, and that is cheap at £15,000. So it really makes me think, what's the point and purpose of the second car? If we need one, we need certain basic features, but that's about all. It's not going to go on a family holiday. It's not going to go on a road trip to France or Scotland. It's not going to carry 4 grandkids to and from school football matches. The average second car in a family just does small local trips with an occasional longer run, possibly 10 or 12 miles. And that's only if the main car is previously occupied. With that in mind, a number of manufacturers now produce and offered for sale these micro EV cars, and for most people with a credit card, you could buy one of these within your credit card limit. We refer, of course, to the Citroën Amy. This is the feature of a test drive and an interview with the owner in an upcoming video, but the Citroën Amy is just a 2-seater. It's a very small car, and it starts at £8,595 on the road. Alongside that, we have the Fiat Tipolino, also at just over £8,000. Or there's a new Kia, which is being advertised, an e-city car, and that's supposed to be a direct competitor, and that will be targeted at about £9,000. And going up from there, we come to the Microlino. This is reminiscent of the old bubble car that we had in the 60s and 70s. This one's starting at £17,000, that's getting decidedly dear. But the BYD Seagull could come in somewhere between £10,000 and £15,000 in the UK. Now, the purpose of this channel is not to tell you what car to buy. What we try to do is show you what's available, what the prices are, and what you can go and have a look at, and then leave you to decide for yourself which is best for you. If the second car is regularly used for carrying, say, one partner and 2 kids, then the micro EVs with just 2 seats are not for you. Don't even look at them. If, on the other hand, you're a couple in a house, the kids have long since gone, they've left, but you still each need a small car, then small cars like the Ami or the Topolino or the Microlino might be suitable for you. Now, I know some of you are laughing at these little noddy cars, but what I would suggest to you is to do exactly what I did. Go and get in one, have a look at it, have a drive in it. Tell you one thing, this will be featured in a video coming out very soon. When you see 2 people well over 6 foot tall, and I'm certainly not the thinnest that I've ever been, getting into one of these cars and driving around and finding we actually have more room in these than most of the other cars we drive in, it does just open your eyes. They are widely accepted abroad in Europe and widely rejected in the UK. Go and have a drive in one, or at least go and have a look at one, because they are amazingly practical. For starters, they're plastic. They don't have any paint. You can't scratch the paint in a car park. And in a small bump, the plastic just bends, then springs back again. But if you do terminal damage, you just unbolt the plastic panel, drop in a new one. There's no painting required. There isn't any. Just bolt a new one on. Well, things are changing very rapidly in the EV world. They're also changing rapidly in the economic world we find ourselves in the UK. Mortgages have gone up, rents have gone up, food's gone up, petrol's gone up, utilities are dearer. Everything is dearer today than it's ever been for a long time. The idea of going out and spending £25,000 on a new second car is now being questioned. Do we really need to spend that much money on the car that might get used 10 or 20 minutes every day? Well, that's a question you need to ask yourself. Abroad, they have long since answered that. Their cars over there are generally much smaller than ours. We seem to be going the opposite way. We're going for the big SUVs, the Land Rovers, Range Rovers, BMW X Series, and Audi Q Series, Q8. And it's a worrying trend that councils everywhere are beginning to realise. This is not EV only, this is everything. Some of the biggest, heaviest cars on the road are pure petrol and diesel. Councils everywhere are becoming worried about car parks and the maximum loading because of the weight of these vehicles. And parking bays that council has spent thousands of pounds marking out, we're finding are suddenly no longer wide enough for the new breed of cars that seems to be taking over. Jim Farley, CEO of Ford, stated this recently in an interview when he said, "We need to get away from the idea of big, huge, gas-guzzling cars and look once again at smaller cars." I hope this video has given you some thought as to what you could be driving if you buy new cars, and if the cars you buy are generally less than £25,000, because today you have a great choice. Later in the year, you'll have an even greater choice, and some fabulous EVs could soon be coming onto the market. I'm Dave, thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and to see more, please subscribe, click the notification bell. Thanks very much to our Patreon members who support the channel. Without you, this would not be possible. I'm Dave.